And we are live. A very good afternoon, everybody. It is 12 o'clock. Bang on. Well done today. Yes. And we are chatting about men's mental health. And really, after listening to the radio and whatnot over the past year or so, it seems to be it's not as much to the fore as everything else. And really, it's a very important topic. So joining me today, and Mary has been here before, is Mary McHugh from counsellingonline.ie. And Mary is a psychotherapist. Mary, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Barbara. It's really lovely to be back. Really
From
lovely.
menopause was our last topic, and men now are this topic. So maybe a bit of a balance. But in all seriousness, men's mental health, really, it hasn't really been discussed in much detail at all over the past few months.
No. And I suppose everything has, unfortunately, with what has happened with COVID, has had to go onto the back burner, which is, I'm sure, going to cause lots of problems in the future, Barbara. And I suppose, men aren't the best, as we know and as we'll talk about probably, at coming forward. And it makes it all the harder, I would feel now, for them.
Is it that they're more hesitant about coming forward, or is it a reluctancy to come forward? Which would you say? I don't know.
I suppose it's a hard one, but that hesitancy, it's sure, and I wouldn't be bothered or putting the bother on somebody, so there can be a lot of that. And I suppose as well, Barbara, and we know this only too well, culturally, they have grinned and bared it. And there's something about as well, an embarrassment for the Irish male to be seen, to be vulnerable, or to have anything physically or emotionally going on for them. They've grown up with the sayings, come on now, you big girl, you don't be at that nonsense, and take it like a man, take it on the chin, and we have all of these, and these sort of go into the cellular system in a way, and it makes it all the harder for them to come up from that, to actually voice that they need help or support. And of course they do, because we all do.
Yes. And that kind of taps into that thing that when they're children, even, I remember myself, boys don't cry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it nearly starts from there. So it's a fear then of, but there is something wrong, but I'd be afraid to tell anybody in case they would see me as, and now I use the word weak, but I don't mean
no,
in that sense.
Yes.
So that's why, I will have a guest coming on, I was saying to you there a few moments ago, in a couple of weeks, and he will be telling his own story. And, like that, you tag people in posts or whatever. And he said, I'd love to come on and talk. Yeah. And I kind of went, wow, he actually wants to come forward and tell the story. And is that what it is? There aren't maybe enough men out there coming forward, telling having their own experience?
Well, I think it's going to be the likes of that man that's going to be coming on, and the likes of, I do see a change. However subtle the change, but it's happening. And we see it more with our young people. They're more comfortable to talk about mental health, both male and female, than my generation or the generation older, or even the generation just under us. But the teenagers that are coming up now, both male and female, I'm seeing a real difference. And it's the likes of people that have gone through it and really see that actually it's so important, because this is my one life. Regardless whether I'm a male or female, this is my one life. And can I get the support that's needed for me? Because that's why we have doctors, that's why we have psychiatrists, we have counselors, we have physios, we have all of these people. That's their job. And they're in a job to look after me when something isn't going okay in our life.
Yeah, and when you put it like that, actually, if just changing the mindset around, instead of saying, I couldn't go and tell them this. Actually, if you're to think of, now hang on a second, they have trained and qualified to do that. So they are actually there for me to approach.
They are. And there's so many, there can be so many underlying issues going on for all of us. But you know, if I was to look at the male and the female, the way the female has been treated, maybe in the medical world, you know, we've had to go for smear tests. Some of us have given birth to children. We have breast examinations. We have, and we are talkers, and the majority of women, I'm not saying all women are talkers, but we tend to, and we tend to be then encouraged by our friends or our sisters or our peers, you know, go on, you need to go and look for whatever. But for the male, and I think, you know, to do with even the male anatomy, that there's nearly an embarrassment that, God forbid, that I have to show a GP anything or tell them that I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. That's huge. They have to there's nearly a mountain to climb for them, that actually we've sort of been put into it because we've no choice. We're called for smear tests, you know, and for those of us that have had children, you know, they've seen it all. So we get that bit easier around our bodies than maybe.
And that's actually a really good way of looking at it, is because when you put it like that, as women, there are, because of our anatomy, there's a list of checks that we have to do anyway for ourselves. And so from the time, you know, you're a teenager or whatever, and you get your first period, it's probably when it all starts, with the visits to the doctor or the hospital or whatever it is. So and funny, I had never thought of it like that, even myself. And it's probably why as well you find, sure, you know, a lot of women would say, sure, himself would never go to the doctor.
They're embarrassed. That's, I suppose, what I see. There's actually an embarrassment. And, you know, we've grown up in a culture where sex, all of these topics were taboo. You know, as you said, we spoke about menopause the last time, and, you know, they were even taboo. But thankfully now, you know, it's a normal transition in our life, as is male health, but actually because of our upbringing, where our young people, you know, the teenagers, they would talk more freely around different things, and, you know, and also they are more Google friendly, so they can go on and they can Google, where there's a certain age group of men that actually haven't a clue how to use you know, a smartphone for Google, or they're caught up in addiction, because, you know, the addiction is a search for something, and it is only when it becomes really, really bad that actually help is sought.
So the other thing I'm thinking is, because as you mentioned, teenagers, and then there's, say, from my own age group up, do you think that maybe as time goes on, that maybe the more men will actually start, because it's a generation then that are kind of catching up, where they're not afraid, that hopefully over the next few years there will be more men will speak up about it, that they will actually get more help? I mean, you must see it there, like on the phone lines, even with yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a real shift. I can actually see it, but the shift is coming from courageous men, that men who, this is how it is. This is normal. It's natural, and I think for us at Counselling Online, that's what we want to be. We want to be that, I suppose I use the word beacon, that we will normalize mental health for all of us, because it is a normal part of life. We all, at some stage in our lives, will struggle. That there is no doubt about it, that there isn't anybody that will not struggle with emotional, physical, both. That's the way it is. So people now are beginning to talk, and people are coming forward. You know,
We just lost you there for a split second, Mary. Lost you there for a split second. Well, one question that I was wondering, so because I mean, you're at the end of the hotline, you and your team, and you get the phone calls. Do men prefer then to talk to a male counselor or psychotherapist, or are they comfortable chatting to a female? I mean, that probably sounds like a real basic question, but it was just something I was wondering.
No, actually, that's actually a really good question. And the answer really is dependent on the person. So you would find, and it can be unconscious, that actually we are coming to counseling for whatever goes on in our lives. It actually is to do with a breakdown in relationship, whether that is with another person or within ourselves. And depending on maybe who that breakdown in relationship is with, and if we go right back, we can maybe trace it to maybe a relationship with our parent. So sometimes that can be the answer to unconsciously that we would prefer to work with a female, and that might be working with mother issues or just female stuff that's going on that we need to have. You know, the female can be quite a nurturing, soft, warm place. And the male might, be maybe, just different, and vice versa. Some female therapists have them qualities too of strength, and, so it's very much dependent on what it is that the person is looking for. So I would say it really doesn't matter. The choice is the person's individual choice. It's not. A woman might be, one woman might be much better. She might feel more comfortable with a male, and vice versa. A male might feel more comfortable with a female, but they might feel more comfortable with a male because he'll understand me. So it's all dependent on what's going on for the person.
Yeah, so their own environment of what they even grew up with or what it is will probably impact then on their choice.
I would feel that would have a bearing on it. Unconsciously, they mightn't be aware.
Yeah.
But that's where the attraction is. That I couldn't talk to a woman. I couldn't talk to a woman, or I couldn't talk to a man. So depending on yourself.
Yeah, and I wonder, would that have something to do with the generational thing as well? Because just from say. Older men say, even in my late dad's generation or whatever, sure wouldn't be telling a woman that.
That's right.
So I wonder, does the generation thing come into it as well?
Absolutely. And again, depending on the rearing that you got, and how the female was talked to within the family, or how the male was talked to. So who was the one that you went to? And the majority tends to go to the mother, but in some cases they don't. They steer clear of the mother, and it's the father they go to. And you will find that then in the therapy as well. That actually, no, I don't want a woman. I don't want and I don't want a man. I want a woman. And again, depending on what has gone on, and depending on what the issue is.
And I'm just looking at that now from a mum's side, because I have sons, and even thinking of that, the one in particular that comes to me, and the other two that automatically go to daddy.
There we go.
And maybe spoiling them had something to do with it. I'm not sure, but it's just as you say that there now, and I'm thinking back and over the years, and even still to this day, and they're in their 20s. The one that would still come to mommy, and those that would go to the boys. But one of the things that, and it just, that popped up when I was researching just ahead of today was
Yes.
Now that has been a phenomenal success, but like that, it's that generation thing again, because it's an awful lot of older men that frequent and have joined up, rather than young. Now, that's just somebody out there will probably tell me, no, Barbara, you're completely wrong. But just from my own experience and from those that I know who would be members, it's that generation now seems to have something to go to.
Yes. And, you know, again, and this taps into, and I believe that the men's sheds were started in Australia. And when they came to Ireland, they're probably here, I think, nearly as long as we're running, about 10 years, 11 years when they came into Ireland first. And I remember thinking, that is just so great. Yeah. Because for the male, they don't do eye contact well. You know, you'll see them if we don't go to pubs now, but if you went to a pub, they're there at the counter and there's one here and there's one there and they're talking away, but they're not looking at each other. So it's shoulder to shoulder. They don't do face to face too well. So the men's sheds are so great for that because you can be working and chatting, and in other words, you can be in silence because you're working. So you don't have to talk, because some people aren't talkers, but they just want the company. And men's sheds offer so much in that. And then, you know, there's the cup of tea. And then if you're having a bad day, maybe, and there is somebody there that'll listen to you, because I find there's nobody nicer than a man to listen to you, because I suppose in my experience, and, you know, you look at your own family and you know, the men are sensitive. Mm. They're actually quite sensitive. They, you know, and we don't, I suppose we've been reared to think that they're not. We're, you know, society tells us that they're not. Big boys don't cry and you're macho. But actually, I feel that for the male, it can be quite a struggle for the male growing up in this world.
And that's the thing, as you said, because they are sensitive. I mean, absolutely, they are human. Yeah. But that's the thing that they have, and generations have grown up with. I can't really show emotion that way. I can't be seen to cry, or because I'll be seen as a failure or weak, or I need to cop on and just get on with it. And like that in itself is such a weight to carry on top of whatever the issue is in the first place that you really need help with.
Yes. And you know, I suppose, you know, when I look at the males, there's sort of always a pressure on the male. And right now there's a confusion for the male, because going back, the male was the real provider. They were the one that had to go out. So that was a huge pressure. Am I going to be able to provide for my family? And now we're thrown into a world where the female is as, if not more, you know, in the line of taking in a salary, that they've really found their power. And at the end of the day, we're all human. And again, you know, so where's my role now? You know, and can I own the role of, maybe it's better if I stay at home and I'm the one that looks after the kids, or, you know, and all of that, and how is that met with peers? And, you know, so there's so many pressures on the male, and there is on the female too, and life is changing, but I do feel for the male, they're struggling to find, where am I? Where am I in this?
Is it that, and even just listening to that, because funnily enough, next week's guest that I have coming on, I have a lady coming on, and her husband, like that, did the stay-at-home dad bit. Yeah. I was just thinking here, gosh, that, you know, I didn't even think of that when we were chatting, for her to come on. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, even in thinking of listening to you talk there, as you say, and men still kind of finding their place mentally. Are women more adaptable? Do we adapt to change quicker, do you think, than men? In that we don't mind trying something, or we don't mind, I'll have a go and I'll see if it works.
Yeah, and that's a really great question, I suppose, to even think on. You know, do we? And I suppose as the mother, and that's changing because the father takes a huge role now with the help of raising children compared to before. And I suppose, you know, when I think back, to when my babies were small. There was probably for me a lot of controlling in the way, oh, you're not doing that nappy right here, give it to me, I'll do it. No, you're not feeding them, look at the mess you're making. So actually we were telling them they were useless.
Yeah, I know.
Does that make sense? And it's like, oh my God, like, so you looked and then you're wondering, how come you're not helping me out? Well, anything I do, you're just... So it's that. So where I think maybe the female now is sort of, if he messes it, he messes it, because I actually need you to do it. I don't know, but I think we could really look more at that. But how we were was quite controlling and quite judgmental of the other person, the male.
Yeah, and I just think back even to when my own children were small, and I'm saying, what do you mean you don't do mash that way for them, right? Okay, they just don't. And I'm thinking, oh my God, is it just something that we all do automatically then?
And again, is it sort of the animalistic brain in us that the mother is, they're mine, and I don't mean that in an awful way, but it's only I can do it, and so then they sort of back away a bit, and and maybe they back away in society a bit, because we can be the woman or the female, I'm not sure, and again, I could get given out to for this, we can be, I'll speak for myself, quite forceful in my thinking, and that's not okay, so I have to look at that and watch that part of me.
Yeah, we do have those debates here in the house, and it's funny, and it ties in with that. When one of the kids, say when they were younger, and they'd ask my husband something, and he'd go, I wouldn't be asking me, I'd be asking the boss. Automatically, ask your mother. So there's lots of those little cycles probably to be aware of when the children are small, to make sure that you're that it is a balanced relationship.
Yeah, and then again, as I suppose we're talking, I'm thinking, and so looking at them culturally. So I would have grown up in a family where my dad worked away during the week. So my mother had sole responsibility of us. So she was in control of all the things. So that was my learning, was for me to be in, so then I brought that into the next generation, but it's then the learning of that you can let go of that and let somebody else take over. And that's what's happening. I think in our world today, the female is quite a strong, and it's great, great that we are. And I know it hasn't always been like that, but I do feel, for me, I always say that I'm a humanist, because the male is as important as the female, and we are equal in importance. There's no hierarchy.
And that's the thing, and we find a lot of times that equal means equal, not better than or more than. It is actually equal, and we have the same emotions, worries, concerns, fears, loves, all those kind of things. But really, it's just for men. I mean, for any man now, say that watches this, and even on replay or something like that, and he's kind of concerned or he's worried about something, what would you say now to him watching?
Well, I suppose, Barbara, what I'd be saying is we are all human, and that things can happen for us physically, so it's so important that we take that step for ourselves, because the amount of time that we spend worrying and anxious and not sleeping because there's maybe a lump here or a bump there, that we're too embarrassed to go with. Our GPs have seen it all and more. Our counsellors have heard it all and more. So whether there is issues, with bodily with you, whether you have issues with addiction, with porn addiction, with alcohol addiction, with depression, with anxiety, that actually that's what the counselors are there for, and that's our job. And we know how to work with you, as the GP knows how to. And that once you get that help, you go on the road to being okay. But it's the holding of that and the damage that that's doing to you on a daily basis can be changed. And it's not okay for you to have to, life is too short. You've only got one life.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
there is nothing that your GP hasn't heard. There's
I completely agree. And I'd even add to that myself by saying, it's not a sign of weakness to actually ask for help, because you're recognizing within yourself, hang on, there's something there. And that in itself takes the strength.
Yeah.
And then just to move that to the next step, which is either, these days it's pick up the phone, as opposed to really knocking on a door now, but pick up the phone, because there is somebody there to help you. And your site there, counselingonline.ie, and do you have how many therapists now working with you, Mary?
At the moment, we've just taken on more therapists, so we'll be up on 25 therapists working. Wow. Yeah, so it's actually, our motto is we will meet you wherever you're at. So that's regardless of what's going on for you. And we even support people because, we would have began because we would have seen people so chronic with anxiety that they weren't able to make an appointment with their GP. So we might even be the stepping stone to getting you to get support to look after your physical health. That can be a part of what we do too.
Yeah. Well, Mary, I hope more people now get to see this interview today, because so much of what you said, like it just rings true. I mean, there's so much to take into account, as you said, the environment growing up and how comfortable maybe the man is with himself or whatever. I mean, it's so much bigger probably than people really, really think. But to end, I'd like to congratulate you on your award that you got there recently for counselingonline.ie. I remember a couple of years ago, or a few years back, when you were just starting out, and to see it just go from strength to strength to strength is just phenomenal. And your power and your strength behind it now, just as a driving force, I have to say, absolutely. So huge congratulations.
Yeah. Huge congratulations. I thought the thing that we're so delighted about is that it is that mental health has been recognized. That it's really showing that mental health is important, and that we've gotten a validation for that. It's just super. We're really, really delighted with it.
Brilliant, Mary. Thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions or they want to pop something in, either pop a DM and we can forward it on to Mary, or get in touch with her there on counselingonline.ie. Absolutely. The website is full of information. But please, please, please do not carry it on your own, because if you're no good to yourself, you'll be no good for anybody else. And we're all definitely in this together in some shape or form. So until next week, when my guest will be coming on talking about education and the stay-at-home husband, I shall see you all then. Mary, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks a million. Thank you, Barbara.